You might call it a silent killer because so few of us ever want to talk about suicide and what leads people to take their own lives. But every 12 minutes in this country, someone does. More than 40,000 Americans commit suicide each year. As researchers work feverishly to understand why, there comes new evidence, stunning evidence, that where you live might elevate your risk. It is most evident in what is called America's suicide belt, and at its center, America Tonight's Adam May found a surprising explanation.
You like this picture of him a lot?
I do. It's one of my very favorite.
Sharon Burton lost her son in what can only be described as a mother's worst nightmare.
And I watched my son die. He shot himself in front of me.
Jordan was 18 when he committed suicide, suffering from mental illness and severe depression.
We just came back from a business trip. He was laying down, and just then he lifted his head up and just said, "Mom, please leave me alone," and then shot himself.
Jordan's suicide is one of hundreds every year in Utah. This beautiful state with sweeping landscapes also has the dubious distinction of being ground zero of America's suicide belt.
Well, that's a real term and a real phenomenon. The Rocky Mountain states have the highest suicide rates in the country.
What did people think might be behind this?
The first theory was that we in the West love our guns, and gun ownership has been strongly associated with the elevated rates of suicide in other parts of the country.
But Harvard-trained neuroscientist Perry Renshaw wasn't convinced.
What are we looking at right here?
He and his team of researchers analyzed 4 types of mental health data and came up with a depression index. Utah ranked number 1, almost 500 suicides, 900,000 insurance claims for antidepressants a year. Now, at the University of Utah, Dr. Renshaw's quest for answers revealed a surprising discovery. Altitude can dramatically affect the chemistry of the brain.
Well, we think it does several things. One is we know that there are changes in energy-containing compounds in 2 critical neurotransmitters. One is serotonin, which seems to regulate mood and anxiety, and one is dopamine. And dopamine is a particularly important neurotransmitter. It's dopamine that's communicating that signal that, hey, this is all right, you're really liking this.
What are the big takeaways from the research so far involving?
Dr. Renshaw found that high altitudes can alter the amount of these neurotransmitters, leading to enjoyment for some and depression for others.
Something we've taken to calling the Utah paradox.
So for some people, the altitude makes them happy. For others, it can lead to depression.
It certainly
can. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
To test this theory, rats were placed in these chambers for 1 week. This one simulates sea level. This one, high altitude. The results were astonishing.
But the findings are almost too good to be true, in that they look like they're drawn with crayons or something because the effects are so very clear and strong. The further you go up in altitude, starting about 2,000 feet, the more depression-like behavior you have.
Here's how they determined if rats were depressed. It's called a swim test, developed 30 years ago by a French psychologist. It's pretty simple. Depressed rats immersed in water eventually give up swimming. Happy rats keep treading water. These rats, who spent extended time in higher altitudes, showed much higher rates of depression.
How real is this suicide belt epidemic?
It's real. If you look at the total number of suicides, we'll lose 500 to 560 total a year. Sometimes we feel like we're the only person that's struggling with it.
Greg Hudnall is also trying to stop the suicide epidemic by offering hope.
Hope Squad members, how do you reach out to your fellow classmates? What are some of the things that you can do?
This is a Hope Squad.
Try to get to know somebody so you can see the signs of depression.
These junior high students, elected by their peers, are being trained to identify fellow students that might be suicidal, showing sudden shifts in social behavior or making direct threats.
So how do we help?
Hudnall also gets called in by schools in the middle of a suicide crisis, and that hasn't been easy.
What do you recall about the day that you responded to the 4th grader that took his life?
Not being able to prevent it. Oh. When we found the body, the officer turned to me and said, the mother's pulling up right now, and you need to do everything you can because she can't. It's now a crime scene, and it was tough. In California.
For years, Hudnall had been trying to get state officials to do more about the suicide problem.
I found out we didn't have one person in the state, on the state payroll, that was full-time dedicated to suicide prevention.
Not one.
Not one.
Last year, State Representative Stephen Ellison led the charge to start funding Hope Squads with state tax dollars.
What do you see here? Hello, Hope Squad members.
The program, which began in just a few dozen schools, is now available to any Utah school that wants it. 125 schools across the state so far.
I'm happy with the progress we've made, but I'm not satisfied because we still have 500 people dying needlessly a year. When you look at traffic accidents, cancer, heart disease, we've attacked those things as a society, and we're making progress, yet suicide is a silent epidemic that nobody wanted to address.
And so remember, when you see that friend, have the courage to walk up and say, "Are you doing okay?"
Hope Squads are showing promise. 2,500 students are now in training.
Is it making a difference?
It's making a huge difference. We've had over 100 kids hospitalized that have been identified through the school, through the program. And it's amazing when you talk to those kids afterwards, because when you're so depressed, you just want the pain to go away. Most of our adolescents that are suicidal or depressed don't want to die. They just want the pain to go away.
What are you looking forward to the most about being on the Hope Squad, Jordan?
I love helping people because it's just fun to do, and I think it helps me too.
How does it help you?
I think helping other people's just makes you more happy inside.
Jordan Burton was randomly elected by students to the Hope Squad. Her classmates had no idea her father committed suicide. Sharn Burton is her grandmother. Jordan was her father. She's named after him.
My grandma actually explained to me that if anybody asks me where my dad is, I can just say he moved to a better place. And that's helped me a lot, just knowing that he's in a better place and that he's happy and he's not sick anymore.
When you hug her, do you feel your son's energy?
Oh yes. She's just got this light about her that's just, she's filled with energy, and I just adore her. I adore her. She actually is one thing that helped get me through my rough days, was having this baby to love and hug and kiss on, and just know this is part of my son. That was beautiful.
A young man who happened to live in a place where the elevation may have affected his brain in ways we're just beginning to understand.
America Tonight's Adam May is with us. You know, Adam, this is striking to me. I think I and a lot of other people regard Utah as a clean air, great outdoors place to live.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to live. And in fact, Joey, what you're saying is completely true, that there are surveys when you look at populations, and Utah residents generally rank among the highest populations in the U.S., but you also have them ranking the highest on the depression index. These two bookends, that's kind of what some doctors are now starting to call the Utah paradox, that the altitude makes some happy and can cause others severe depression.
You talked about some of the efforts that the state is making, and you think about the community. You have seen a lot and heard of a lot of other personal stories that are just devastating to think about.
It really is. I mean, Joey, when you hear about the individual stories of the people who have lost their lives out there and committed suicide, and I mean, people as young as 4th grade, those people really just don't have the kind of control in order to do this, which raises so many questions as to what else can be done about this. There is a state lawmaker out there that is also trying to increase access to psychiatric care. That is another problem in Utah because there is such a large rural population, providing some incentives for urban doctors to provide telemedicine services to people in rural areas. They are attacking this on multiple ends right now. They're hoping that what they've seen is a plateau in that suicide rate, and eventually in the next couple of years they would like to see it drop. What else have you seen, stories you've heard personally, really struck you as an indicator of how deep the depression is out there? It was like everywhere we turned and you spoke to someone, they were affected by somebody that had committed suicide. I thought that was quite striking. The one woman, Sharn, who we interviewed for this piece, she has been running a support group after her own son's death. And that support group, in the few years that she has been doing it, has had 1,000 people. Joey, 1,000 people have come through the doors, and this is not in downtown Salt Lake. This is about an hour outside of the city. Very striking. America Tonight's Adam May.